Alright, I'm going somewhere with this, by the way. Rogue One opens with this non-diegetic sting. There are two immediate connotations. On one hand, the film unnerves the audience to introduce its particular focus on suspense, but on the other hand, it's also something that's deeply metatextual for the reason that it knew the audience was expecting the iconic burst of John Williams' music, but it overtly substitutes it with something else. Therefore, in both cases, the sound is designed to address the film's own packaging and its own weird relationship with the brand. In other words, it's a Star Wars film that's subtly self-conscious of its identity as a Star Wars film. So let's take these observations and evaluate them within the academia. And when I mean academia, I mean the mnemonic imagination.
Taking them to imprison them in prison.
He is taking us to...
Quiet!
I'm pretty sure I'm not going to offend anyone by saying that I liked Rogue One, although it could be because Felicity Jones, isn't it?
What is this?
But what fascinated me wasn't really the film, but the film's position in the literary context of nostalgia academia. As I quote from Emily Keatley and Michael Pickering, because of course I am, nostalgia is a form of temporal dislocation, where remembering is not motivated by the pursuit of accuracy, but by emotion. Therefore, it's often unavoidably creative, since it involuntarily prioritizes sentimentality over reality. Subsequently, this can be divided into two typologies, reconstructive or deconstructive nostalgia. The reconstructive approach often presents the ideas of the past as a form of present-day truth. You often see this in political campaigns, advertisements, or whenever anyone's trying to get the support of boomers. However, the deconstructive approach often scrutinizes nostalgia by challenging it and making people aware of the remembering process itself.
Our intentions of making a film that was honest to their experience, not honest to Hollywood's version of war movies over the last 50 years.
Many scholars have their own variations of this binary model. Immanuel Kant, and I know it's technically pronounced as the C word, but I don't want to get into trouble, defined it as reproductive/recollective imagination versus productive/inventive imagination. Svetlana Boym categorized it as restorative nostalgia and reflective nostalgia, and Andrei Wiesen modeled it as reconstruction and renegotiation. Rogue One, unlike the other Star Wars stuff, doesn't smoothly fit into either typologies for the reason that it's too self-aware and subversive to fit into the reconstructive style, since it explicitly moves the genre from being a playful space adventure about spirituality into a straight-up war story about PTSD, political ideologies, and fear culture.
The odds are too great.
But it's also not wholly deconstructive because it ends in a way that reaffirms the old values. Rogue One, you could say, exists in an interstitial space between boundaries. In a fun way, it's very paradoxical. Rogue One can be split into two halves, a spy movie that features the sci-fi equivalent of a globe-trotting adventure where the characters distrust each other with their hidden motives and are off to collect information.
I know how to...
The second half is a war film where it's BAM! BOOM! Subsequently, the connective tissue between these halves is the tone. There's a prevailing sense of fear and lack of moral clarity that contextualizes everything.
But you wouldn't understand that.
Orders? When you know they're wrong.
The first half introduces characters that are deeply emotionally impotent. Now, when I mean impotent, I don't mean that they can't get their willies up, but they feel deeply emotionally ineffectual. As Cherub Imwe said,
There is more than one sort of prison. I sense that you carry yours wherever you go.
so it's like taking time off from making Spider-Man videos. Furthermore, the main relationship that serves as the emotional framework for the story is Jyn Erso and Cassian Andor. They're both designed to subvert and deconstruct some of the original trilogy's motifs. For example, when Cassian shoots the informant in his introduction, it's eerily similar to Han Solo's introduction, where the character picks survival over their own humanity. However, the camera lingers on Cassian's regretful expression way longer than the audience is normally comfortable with before he's forced to run, so it goes from being cool to horrible, like pushing a granny over to get to KFC mid-lockdown. Additionally, the events that shape Jyn's origins is also inverted from Luke's. Instead of being spared witnessing her family's execution, Jyn sees her mother die firsthand and grows up assuming that her father is dead too. Instead of choosing to leave home out of an ambition to conquer the outside world and to inherit a special name, Jyn is forced to leave home because it's taken from her, and she only inherits the role of a messenger for more important people.
Hope.
Rebellions are built on hope.
Therefore, due to their obstructed potentials, they're both characters that are judged. So when you put them next to each other, they become a mirror for each other. Jin refuses to see herself as a soldier and only subscribes to the belief that she's an impartial survivor despite how much good is inside her waiting to come out. While in contrast, Cassine is a soldier who can't confront the fact that his commitment to survival has eroded away his morals as a human being to the point that he doesn't actually know if he's on the right side anymore.
You might as well be a stormtrooper.
What do you know? I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old.
However, when they bond, they heal each other. They save each other's life a couple of times, and he can't shoot her father, while Jin begins to adopt some of Cassine's convictions so she can become a better person and process her father's death in a meaningful way.
Rebellions are built on hope.
Therefore, the journey to obtain the secrets of the Death Star becomes a metaphor for them discovering themselves and finding a way out.
I couldn't face myself if I gave up now.
The big corny speech Jin has is used to put on display the very qualities Cassine and the rebels had forgotten from decades of fighting. They carry words that Cassine accidentally quietly slipped to Jin. So in the end, the sacrifice they and everyone makes is thematically contextualized as a form of redemption. In other words, Jin turns everyone into a simp.
Your father, he said I could get right by myself. He said I could make it right if I was brave enough to listen to what was in my heart, do something about it. Guess it was too late.
It wasn't too late.
Hope as a narrative concept massively sticks out in Rogue One because it seems so oddly inappropriate, almost alien in tone for such a miserable film, but that's kind of the point. It's corny enough to be relevant to the original trilogy's simple optimism, and at the same time it's a political weapon used against the Empire, so it's also relevant to the prequels.
I've never had the luxury of political opinions. My father gave his life so that we may have a chance to defeat this.
So you've told us. I say we fight. I say the rebellion is finished.
Therefore, hope as a rhetoric is what transitions the film's deconstructive outlook to the reconstructive one. Hear me out. The original trilogy, despite its in-your-face hippie politics, is an extreme example of reconstructive nostalgia because within its melting pot of media influences from Dune to Kurosawa is a super traditional King Arthur tale. You have a peasant boy who discovers he's got king's blood, inherits a magical sword, a wizardly mentor, and a prestigious destiny. Luke doesn't earn these advantages, he gets them because it's his birthright, it belongs to him. It's an old timey-wimey system built into these types of stories. Everything else runs on similar traditions.
I want to learn the ways of the Force and become a Jedi like my father.
The original trilogy reinstates all of these old simple ideas, and that's part of its appeal and accessibility. As Andrew Gordon argued, in the absence of any shared contemporary myths, Lucas has constructed out of the usable past, out of its own American pop culture, a new mythology which can satisfy the emotional needs of both children and adults. Why am I reading such a dramatic? In contrast, the prequels is one of the most extreme examples of deconstructive nostalgia for the reason that all of these ideas are completely obliterated.
Anakin, my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy!
This trilogy has the same Arthurian skeleton of the peasant boy from nowhere becoming the chosen one, but this time he turns into an authoritarian maniac. Realistic modern concerns that weren't addressed before are now, like trading, democracy, and taxes, which are now stuff that I can't take seriously in real life because I associate them with Star Wars. The war itself in the Star Wars is not even a heroic endeavor worthy of celebration. Instead, it's entirely manufactured so the villain can manipulate democracy, and the Jedi were so distracted by an old myth that they led themselves to their own destruction. As a result, the prequels took all of these traditions and expectations to basically criticize their lack of relevance and truth within a more complicated modern world.
You were the chosen one! It was said that you would destroy the Sith, not join them!
Therefore, when you put these trilogies next to each other, there's a grafting process where the simpler morals of the original trilogy is given a more complex context.
That Anakin will bring balance to the Force and destroy the Sith. He becomes Darth Vader. Darth Vader does become the hero. Darth Vader does destroy the Sith. meaning himself and the Emperor.
Luke isn't the hero anymore, Darth Vader is. The rebels aren't just the good guys because they're the underdog, but they're specifically the outcome of an important political process.
This is how liberty dies.
And the Force isn't just a superstitious entity, it's explainable by science and etc. The prequels assimilate the original trilogy, so they participate in its deconstruction. It's very one-sided because the original trilogy has no real means of addressing or rebuking these changes. However, when you put Rogue One between trilogies, suddenly you have a bridge that kind of goes both ways, for the reason that, like the prequel trilogy, Rogue One shares a similar deconstructive vision where rebels are okay with torture, assassinations, they start gunfights in places filled with innocent people, and the Death Star itself isn't just an evil thing, but a symbolic political tool similar to real-life WMDs, not to mention everyone's impotence is the result of how helpless they feel within their political situation.
You can stand to see the Imperial flag reign across the galaxy.
It's not a problem if you don't look up.
But all this stuff is linked to the spy stuff in the first half, so they're explicitly dropped in the second half with the war. Additionally, the character arcs are also dependent on this transition.
We don't all have the luxury of deciding when and where we want to care about something. Suddenly the rebellion is real for you.
Therefore, if you look at Rogue One as a component of this 9-part saga, it creates a thematic bridge where the prequels don't assimilate the original trilogy, but transitions into them. The most important narrative beat and symbolic image that exemplifies this is when Jyn literally lets go of trying to persuade the rebel leaders to vote for a mission and does it herself with the volunteers, who are all morally complicated people looking for redemption.
I need to speak with Admiral Raddus.
He's returned to his ship. He's going to fight.
Through the lens of Episode 4, everyone represents an old, wounded, and overly complicated world that must die for a new, youthful, simpler one to rise up.
Your Highness, the transmission we received.
Through the lens of Episode 3, it reinforces the grafting process, where the optimism and hope of the original trilogy is the political legacy of Jyn and the Rogue One crew, in the same way that everything else is the political legacy of Palpatine's Clone Wars. In other words, Rogue One deconstructs to reconstruct, and reconstructs to deconstruct. I'm sorry if this sounds really confusing, but this is the best way I could try and explain it. The point I'm trying to express is that nostalgia is a complicated type of remembering, where what sort of ideas are endorsed is not always simple, because memories are engaged in a complex negotiation, so it's not just clap, boomer, clap. Well, I mean, sometimes it is, but Rogue One has a bit more ambition than just simply novelty, and yeah, that was my 10-pence sociology class, everyone. I'm gonna go and eat some pie.
Are you kidding me? I'm blind.